Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, the ups and downs, and how to navigate life with kids on your own while keeping sane. Covering subjects such as domestic violence through to fussy eaters and solo dating. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest has been a week on, week off dad with his kids for about 10 years since his divorce, and covers 100% of the financial responsibility as well as running his own business. In the week he doesn't have them, he crams in as much work as possible to pay for everything and has found a positive way for all of them to live successfully. After all, the children are the ones that have to move between two houses every week. He'd love the chance to inspire other parents, be vulnerable and share some of the learnings he's made. Hence, I've invited him on this podcast. Hey, welcome, Jem. Thanks for joining the podcast. Thanks for coming on board today.
Hello, Claire. Thanks so much for having me.
No, that's okay. Crikey. So, 10 years since your divorce, and you have your kids week on, week off. Tell us a bit about your story then. Tell us a bit about, I don't need to know the ins and outs of the divorce, but tell us a bit about, how you've got to have this work so well, and were there any points where it didn't work quite so well? I'm sure there's a lot of listeners on here either going through this or having to navigate co-parenting, and it would be interesting to hear a little bit about your story and what you've done to improve your situation with your kids.
Yeah.
And how many kids have you got? Sorry, I didn't mention it.
So when I say we, I mean their mum and I have got two teenage boys. One's about to turn 18 in 2 weeks, and wow. The other one's 15. He'll be 16 in May this year. And I have repartnered, but we still keep separate houses. And my partner has a 15-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. So there is 4 of them in the mix. We've been together for 6 years, but we've kept the 2 houses, and we did that specifically for the kids. We thought, if we throw these 4 kids all under the one roof and force them to try and get along, it's going to be a nightmare. So we've done that for them, but actually, funnily enough, it's worked out really well for our relationship as well. We're both week on, week off with our kids, and we're in sync with each other. So when I have my kids, my partner has her kids at her place, and then when the kids go to their other parents, we get to live together for a week with no kids.
Which is perfect.
So that's wonderful. And it's great for the relationship. Inadvertently, we've figured out that, it's really lovely to have our own space and have our own time. And so that's worked out really well. But no, it wasn't always easy to figure this out. It's still not always easy.
Yeah.
In the week when I'm single parenting, when it's just me and my boys, I'm running a business and doing the single parenting and teenage kids. I mean, when we separated, they weren't quite teenagers yet, so they needed a lot more hands-on stuff. But as they get older, it's not so much that you need to, wipe up after them, so to speak, but it's more about there's school sport training on every night. There's school sports on the weekend. They've both got jobs. They don't have their licenses yet. You become the taxi driver, and you have to work with school hours, right? But when you're running your own business, those hours don't always quite match up. So that's the juggle. But look, it wasn't easy. None of us get married thinking we're going to get divorced one day, right? We all get married thinking we're going to spend our lives together. And, when it was getting towards the time of calling it and just saying to my then wife, we can't do this, And it turns out that once I actually finally got to the point of saying, can't do this anymore, and we had decided to separate, she then let me know that she'd given up on me 5 years prior. Okay, all right.
It's usually, so I have to say, it's usually the case that women actually, women actually already realise that situations are, not salvational. There's no, you can't save it. Or they've given you several chances in the lead up to a separation, and if we haven't told you, and I've got to say, we have to take ownership of this to a little bit as well. If we haven't told you that we're giving you a chance, or that there's things that aren't quite right and we aren't communicating it in the best way, then we're not giving you a chance to actually deal with stuff anyway.
And I take ownership for it as well. And I kept trying and trying and trying. I just didn't want to give up. And I was very aware that it needed work. I wasn't doing the typical bloke, head in the sand, everything's all right, mate, she'll be right, mate, crack a beer and get on with it. I wasn't doing that at all. I was like, this is not good. We need to sort this out. But we couldn't anyway. So long story short, the thing that was the scariest for both of us was the kids. The boys were only 8 and 6 at the time. And we were just petrified that it would be traumatic and devastating for them. In fact, the younger one had been saying to us for a couple of years, kind of picking up on the vibe, obviously. And he'd been saying to us, if you two ever separate, that's it. I'm going to die. It's going to be all over. And it was the drama of a 6-year-old. And it's like, oh God, this is terrible. And then even when we got to the point where we decided, look, we're not going to be able to salvage this, and long-term we are going to be better off apart, we still couldn't bring ourselves to tell the kids for a year and a half. We lived in the same house.
Wow.
And I wanted to tell the kids, but my wife was saying, no, I can't tell them. I'm not ready to tell them. I'm not ready to tell them. So we were living separately.
But were you living separately, but like...
No, we were in the same house, same bed, separated.
Yeah, but in the same house, same bed for
a big chunk of it. And then...
Yeah, no, I've been there, so I understand.
And then I was on the couch nights. And anyway, it got to the point where the boys were asking me, saying, are you and Mum okay? What's going on? Are you separating? And I just couldn't keep lying to them. And I said to her, I can't keep lying to my boys. One of my core values is honesty. And I'm lying to my own children. I can't do this anymore. I have to tell them. She said, are you threatening me? I said, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you I have to tell our kids, and I really hope you're there with me when I do. And it turns out that we did tell them together, and it was as horrible as we thought it would be, and it was traumatic. And there was years of it being really, really tough and really, really hard for the kids. And, I was thinking about this, Claire, before coming to chat with you today about this whole story that your listeners can identify with. The co-parenting thing, and especially at the start, the co-parenting thing was tricky for so many reasons, but one of them being that you try and have agreed parenting rules and guidelines, but one of the reasons you separated is because you disagree on things like this, right? You disagree on things like parenting. And so now I find myself as a single parent going, right, I want to raise my boys the way I see fit to raise them, but then at the same time, my ex is saying to me, you can't do that. We have to agree. And her version of compromise was me saying, all right, well, let's do it your way. So that was really, really tricky to navigate. And me going from being I had really become quite emasculated in my relationship. I own that. No one did anything to me. I did that, but I was like, oh yeah, whatever you want, honey. And okay, we'll do it your way, honey. And I just became, and that was very unattractive as well, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, but also, like, if you're in if you've spent several years in the mindset of like, this is not working, I need to do something about it, and it's and that can actually happen where you have got people, one part of the relationship trying to please the other partner to try and fix things, right? Yeah. In a way, you being the fixer in the relationship, and trying to mediate and fix everything and get it back to 5 years prior or whenever, and go from there. So look, we all take on different roles within relationships and at different times within those relationships as well. So it's nobody's fault.
No.
And sometimes it can be like our default style in a relationship, for want of a better word, being the morning, and I'm trying to think, but it can be a default style that we go to, or something that we've learned from our parents that we actually then go, I need to do this to make things better, different, whatever. So when you told the boys, did you then continue to stay together in the same household and live in the same house
for from when we told the boys? I think it was then 6 months, but I moved into the caravan, so I slept in the. My house was the pop top caravan out in the driveway. But we stayed together then for another 6 or 7 months while we were selling the house and everything like that. Luckily, I don't know. It's funny. I'm calling it lucky, but we didn't really have anything to fight over in terms of what we owned. We had a bunch of debt. By the time we sold the house, we were $100,000 in debt. I just took all the debt and gave her all the contents.
Oh, wow.
Just said, you take everything you want. I'll take the debt and we'll work it out. And I only just paid off that debt last year. So, you know, and I've insisted on paying to raise the kids. I don't know. That's just my thing. One of my archetypes is provider. This is not gender specific. Anyone can be provider. I'm just talking about that the archetype itself of wanting to provide, and that's something that I've identified with. And so I said, look, I'm going to cover the costs of raising these kids until they move out one day. And that's just how we set it up. So,
yeah, and look, I'm very similar to you. I'm cover 100% financially. You know, I'm 100% financially responsible for my son, and it would be nice to get help, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and ask for it. You know, my view is, you know, this person that we have created is part mine, part his father's, and therefore, you know, we should contribute equally. But if that's not going to happen, then it's okay.
What are you going to do?
I'll provide for him. Well, no, but I provide for him because he's my kid.
Yeah, well, you're
he's
not going to give him
son.
half a meal and say you're half hungry because your dad won't give you any, won't support you.
and I want him to experience and deal with and do everything that he wants to do. So, you know, he's at stage school at the moment, which is great. He does soccer, he does AFL, and, you know, I have to finance these things, but I don't want him not to experience and not to deal with it.
Because they're the innocent ones through this story, right? They're the ones who are like, oh, all of a sudden mum and dad.
Agree.
And, you know, the sad thing to watch is that kids naturally tend to blame themselves when they're little. They think, I'm not good enough for my mum and dad to want to stay together. And they, you know, it's a very human thing. We make it all about ourselves. And so to unravel that and to smooth out the creases of that as they're growing up. And, you know, I've made a real effort to just keep reminding my boys that it's not their fault, that they're good enough just the way they are. It was just their mum and I kind of thing. And look, we have got to a point now where we get along fine, which is great. We co-parent quite easily. And she has finally come to accept that some of the ways I parent are not the way she wants to parent, and that she has to be okay with that. You know, I'm not, it's not like I'm reckless and putting my kids in danger at all, but there's just some differences in ideologically in the way we think things should go, you know.
But at the end of the day, you're a dad, right? So dads, I hate to say it, but dads are different from mums, right? We like to, you know, cuddle, and I'm not saying dads don't like to cuddle, but we like to say, you know, make sure our kids are safe and like don't put them at any risk. And I've seemed to experience that men have a different risk assessment of situations. It's not that they want to put their child in danger or anything like that, but they like to be able to let them go and do what they need to go and do and learn the lessons that they need to go and learn. Whereas I think us mums tend to want to look after and, you know, because I suppose it's the nurturing side of us. I don't know. I'm sure there's people out there who will happily tell me otherwise, but like it's the nurturing side where you want to, you know, you feed that child. When that child comes out of you feed that child, you look after that child. And the father's role is important, but slightly different.
Yeah.
You have a different outlook and
absolutely. Yes.
That's a word. I'm not sure whether it's right. I don't know whether it's nature, whether it's nurture. They've done some experiments regarding male monkeys and female monkeys, and you know, male monkeys go to the trucks and construction and various different things like that have been set out in a big wide area for them, and the female monkeys tend to go to the dolls and the, you know, toys and mother them, and so it's very
it makes
bizarre.
Sense. I mean, it makes sense. You know, I think it's important to remember that in our fight for equality, which I'm on the fight for equality as well. And I actually believe the world would be in a much better place if we had more women in decision-making roles. So I'm on this massive push for this as well. But let's not get confused. Equality doesn't mean that we're exactly the same. We're different. Men can't conceive a child and grow a child inside them and breastfeed and birth and breastfeed, all that stuff. Men can't do that. We're genetically we're different, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So the differences that you're talking about are generalizations, and that's okay. We can generalize. And yes, there's anomalies, and yes, there's exceptions to the rule. And yes, some men are more feminine than masculine, and all of that's beautiful. I cuddle my boys. Both of my boys are very tactile, and they're about to turn 18 and 16, and we still cuddle on the couch. We still hug every day,
Yeah. But that's
so
great.
that's fine.
Awesome.
But what you're saying about the way we're wired, yeah, I think it's true, and I do, my risk assessment is different. That's one of the areas where we disagree. Their mum and I, and that is what it is.
But I think it's all part of, and you've got boys. I mean, maybe your risk assessment would be a little bit different if you had
100%.
girls. Do you know what I mean? And your ex-partners or ex-wives risk assessment would be completely different because they're girls.
Completely.
So she sort of understands. So it's it is all fine, and I agree with you. Look, I think we have to, men and women have to work together as teams.
Yeah.
We have to work together and pool our strengths. Yeah. We have to respect each other, and we have to not. And I just did it, so apologies. But we have to not generalize, and we have to accept people as human beings. And I think it's one of the biggest things.
And given that, that's a foundation of our interactions, is that we respect each other, and we respect each other, including all of our differences. I mean, diversity is such an important part of us as a species. So given that we respect each other, right, if that can be a foundation, then it can be helpful in conversations to generalize sometimes. We're not talking about individuals and saying you are like this. We're talking about as a species, that the female that is the bearer of the child is wired in certain ways, and that's necessary
to have children. I must admit, I do sometimes wish that you men could have kids. Then you would understand.
Do you know what?
But I'm sure you wish we could do things.
I don't wish you could do anything else. I think you're awesome the way you are, to be be and happy International Women's Day for yesterday, by the way.
Yeah.
But for me,
yes, exactly.
Interesting on reflection as the bloke, as the male in the child creation process. I know I'm not alone in feeling like a bit of a third wheel at points in time, because you go, wow, I can't conceive a child. I can't grow the child inside me. I can't bear the child. I can't birth the child. I can't feed the child. Wow. I'll just change the nappies or do whatever I can do. But there's this feeling of, am I really needed here? And I know for some men, they really struggle with that. For me, I was just looking for ways that I could be useful. Getting out there and earning the coin, which I know sounds sexist to some people, but I'm not saying this is not about sex. This was just about me going, what the hell can I do to be useful right now? And I was a very hands-on dad. I love babies. I loved my own babies, and I was changing nappies and washing them in the bath and singing to them and putting them to bed as much as I possibly could. Loving all of that. But as a guy, you're kind of like, oh, what's my place here? And honoring and revering women for everything that you can and do, because I know it's not easy.
But the thing is, I think the key point with all of this is that I think when you and your ex-wife separated, like the boys, especially boys, and if you read all the books and things like that, boys from about the age of 5, 6 onwards through to their teens are very much daddy, and not very much mummy. So earlier on, there is mummy, but then we need to understand the different roles that we actually undertake within our children's lives. And it is unfortunate, and I do feel for you guys, because it is very much about mum at the beginning, with everything. And I understand completely how you guys would feel like a third wheel, because all the attention is on mum and bub, and all of those sort of things can go on, and it is difficult for men to actually go, right, great, okay, I did make this with you, can I be included? And some women shut all of that out, not through anyone's fault, but it can be through post-traumatic stress syndrome. What am I talking about? Postnatal
depression,
PPD and PPA and stuff like that. So it can be all through that as well. So, there's all of these things, that hormones and stuff like that are going on.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what what was the hardest part? Telling the children, I'm assuming, would be the
Yeah,
hardest part.
telling the kids. I think telling the kids was the hardest part for
How
sure.
did you prepare for that?
Oh, look, we spoke about it obviously before sitting down with them, and we spoke about how we really wanted them to know that it was a joint decision. It wasn't one of us leaving the other. It was both of us deciding that this was the best thing for us. We wanted still that to be, we had tried in the marriage, we had tried this idea of the united front. We really had tried to always present to the kids like we were on the same team, but that started to fall apart because as much as we didn't want this, we started to argue in front of them. It was never physically violent. We're both not that sort of person, but it was just niggly and irritated with each other and resentful and just the energy was not nice, And so, but at the end, it was like, we need to present to the kids that we've equally decided that this is the way that we're going to move forward. So we did that. It was horrible. There was lots of tears and trauma, and then the trauma started to play out. And then when I fell in love again, we both kind of repartnered very quickly, funnily enough. And when I did, with my current partner now, my younger boy and her girl kind of took out their trauma of their parents separating on each other, and they just were horrible to each other. Yeah, and it was a real navigation. We really had to navigate through that. Which we did, but it took a few years. It wasn't just like all of a sudden everything's rosy. It was really, really hard. And my younger boy felt like he was losing me to my new partner. Yeah. He was very, very attached to me, and he struggled really behaviorally, really struggled for a few years. He's come really good now, and now the 4 kids are blended.
Awesome. Yeah.
They call each other brothers and sister. It's just easier for them rather than trying to say, oh, that's my mum's boyfriend's son kind of thing. So they just say, oh, that's my brother. Yeah. So that's all nice, but wasn't easy.
I must admit that is one of the concerns with my son, because we've been a team for the last 4 years. So it is me and him. And I'm not in any way interested in the dating game as such, but my concern is that if I do go down that avenue, the impacts that it's going to have on him, because it's been me and him in the same house, me and him through lockdown, me and him dealing with everything, me taking him to all of his sports, me taking him to X, Y, and Z.
How old is he, Claire?
He's 6.
Yeah, he's 6, and in the years to come, you'll probably just naturally be having conversations with him about what happens if mummy meets a man one day and falls in love, and
Well, I have already had that conversation. And he said, no boyfriends for you. You're not allowed boyfriends, but I'm allowed girlfriends.
That'll change.
Like, right, okay.
That'll change.
No. I mean, that's okay. And it's a very...
He'll get to the point where he's like, Mum, I found this dating app. Get on it, will you?
Yeah, exactly. I'll be like, oh, okay, great, okay. But and I'm very cognizant of that. So regarding the co-parenting, because I'm really interested in how you obviously telling the kids was the worst thing, but you got through it and that was all good. I mean, did you, and you've said about the challenges you had between not having the right, not being on the same wavelength as such with some of your parenting ideas. Is there anything that comes to mind that you sort of go, oh, yeah, these were hard, but was there a turning point as such?
But also the other hard thing for me was that I had to rewire neurologically. I had to rewire my dysfunctional role play in that relationship, because it had got to the point where she would mother me. She'd, tell me what to do and treat me like a child, and I would behave like an insolent teenager. If she told me I wasn't good enough at something, then my reaction was to go into teenage boy and be mopey and resentful and irritable. And it was this dysfunctional dynamic of mother-child, which I think a lot of couples fall into. And so when we separated, I was through this whole separation, I also had my midlife kind of crisis awakening, and I lost my job and lost the marriage. We had lost the house. I lost everything. Everything except my boys.
Yeah. Wow.
and I was going on a real cathartic self-healing journey of rewiring my beliefs around myself, and that I am good enough, and I do deserve happiness, and I do deserve, beautiful relationships, and I deserve abundance, and all these things that we want, right? Because I used to think I wasn't good enough.
Wow. Okay.
So I had to rewire that. And as I was rewiring that and seeing a psychologist and doing a lot of work on myself and realizing that I was doing this resentful teenage boy role, that I had to help myself move out of that and drop into my man, and then when she would say something that in the past I would get triggered on, to notice that I was triggered and breathe, do my work, just sit still, come back into my man, be grounded, and just speak my truth with love.
Yeah.
But with self-assuredness, not cockiness, not trying to prove anyone wrong or anything, just knowing me and trusting me and saying, I hear you, but this is how I feel. And as a man, not as a boy. So that was really hard. It didn't come easily,
Wow.
The neural wiring that we have. I was 42 at the time, and so you got 42 years of wiring, right? And you can't just flick a switch and it all changes. It needs to be persistent. So,
and also, like, I think a lot of that wiring comes from culture, comes from school, comes from, how we're brought up, comes from, where we work and what we do and things like that. I mean, my day job is a very male orientated environment.
yeah.
So there are a lot of women, God love them, some women out there, but there are a lot of women who find me very aggressive, who can find me very male-ish because I work in a male environment. I deal with men all the time.
Yeah, you have to access your masculine energy. And as a single parent, you're doing masculine and feminine, right? Because you're making shit happen and getting shit done, excuse my language. But at the same time, you're the nurturer, carer, the soft, So,
and it's a very hard role for me, because that nurturer carer thing I see as a weakness to a certain extent. Like when you had to cut, and I'm over the last 4 years, thank God. And in a way, the relationship and the environment that I had to have my child within and deal with has made me look at myself. And I think that's why I'm not out there in the dating world, because I'm still doing that healing work, assessment, looking at where I'm at, looking at who I am, so I can then do what you did, which was to actually be able to sit in who you are and go, well, I am good enough. This is me. It's not all about me, my ego, etc., and all of those sort of things. And to actually be a more grounded, rounded person.
Yeah,
to enable,
absolutely. And
you to bring up grounded, rounded
if we look for anything positive to come out of horrible stuff, like separating is horrible. It's just not nice. Single parenting is not easy. So when I look for, what are some of the benefits to come out of it, or the positives to come out of it, all of this self-development work that I've done, becoming at ease with myself, radical self-acceptance, self-love, and now being in a relationship that's beautifully conscious. I mean, I won't go on too much about my current relationship, but just suffice to say it's wonderful. But I wouldn't have got here if I hadn't gone through all the stuff I've gone through, and I wouldn't have become at peace with myself if I hadn't gone through that separation and been forced to actually self-heal. So there's a lot of positives that have come out of it, and I don't have any regrets. I'm super glad that my ex-wife and I fell in love. I'm so glad we had our beautiful boys. I adore my children more than anything in the whole wide world, right? Which is what us parents do. So there's no regrets. And now, with the benefit of hindsight and the self-work that I've been doing, I can actually appreciate it and go, wow, what a journey. And I'm kind of glad for it all,
Yeah, I think life is a journey, from beginning to end, wherever that end may be, and whenever that end may be. So it is a journey, and it is about living the best life you can. How do you co-parent? So in the beginning, how did you co-parent in the volatile emotional sort of stage? So you were living together, but not
for
together.
A year and a half or something.
Yeah, and then you separated. So my assumption is you weren't in the caravan for too long. So you both then went and bought separate houses, did you?
Rented. Neither of us have been able to buy again since then.
Wow. Yeah, crazy Australia.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Until just very recently, my partner and I bought an investment property in a small country town because it was cheap enough. Yeah. No, so it was in those initial stages when we first physically moved out from each other. The codependence was actually the codependence from one side, and this was both of our doing. I was about to say not fault, but both of our doing was that through the marriage, when we first had kids, I'd said to her, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep working and we'll both work part-time and parent part-time? Do you want to be a stay-at-home mum? Like, your choice. You tell me what you want to do and I'll work around that. And she said, actually, I really want to be a stay-at-home mum because I just want to cherish this time mothering, right?
Yeah.
So she stayed at home as a stay-at-home mum, and over those years, I was doing everything else because that's what I could do. So she became completely dependent on me. She didn't even know how to log into online bank accounts or pay bills or any. She did. Yeah. She was an awesome mum, beautiful, wonderful mum, but I did everything else. So when we separated, there was this dependency on me, and it was hard because she had to learn how to do everything, and I had to try and stop rescuing, so that she could find her independence again. And it was tricky. And she kept calling me for stuff all the time. I need you to come over and lift this for me. I need you to come over and do this for me. And I was trying to say, hey, you've got a boyfriend, call him up.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. And I suppose that's why I wanted to just dive into that a little bit more detail regarding the separation side of things. Because, I mean, how long were you guys married?
Almost 20 years.
Exactly. So you've been with that person for 20 years, right? That person is embedded in your life, whether, my longest relationships have been like 8-10 years, right?
Yeah.
But even so, that person is embedded in your life, right? To then walk away from that, admittedly, you've still got the boys and you're still dealing with the boys either side, but then to walk away with that, it's very hard.
It's hard. Yeah. There's a lot of association.
How did you deal? Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And at the end of the day, it's not as though you like hate each other. Like, you fell in love and got married. So there's an affection and an emotional connection with that person. It's just that you've maybe grown apart, and on different journeys as such. But like, how did you get to a point where? How did you break that, the rescuing and all of that sort of side of things, but still effectively co-parent, because you still got the boys, both of you still got the boys, and
one moment at a time, one instance at a time, and it was gradual, So it on a scale, kind of on a spectrum from being dependent and completely associated with each other to becoming independent and less associated with each other. And we haven't even arrived yet. I'll still think when I'm in a conversation with someone and I go to say my partner's name, neurologically, my ex-wife's name pops into my head because for 20 years, that was the name that you were saying, right? You were saying me and so. You said that hundreds of times a day for 20 years. So I don't feel bad. It's not that I still have any.
Well, and it's no detriment to your existing partner. It's the fact that it's a habit.
It's just a habit.
It's like,
just a neurological habit.
That,
So, this is just the way it is, and it's just a continual letting go. And so, in answer to your question of how do you do that, it's just through conscious awareness and effort in each moment. So there's a moment where I would get triggered by her, and I'd be going back into that boy, and I'd be like, "Can we swear on your podcast?" Yeah, right. And I'd be like, fuck. So
if you heard me every day, I'm like,
so I'd get triggered, right? And internally, I'd be going, fuck you, like internally.
Oh wow!
This is back at the start.
That's the teenage boy, isn't it?
And I'd have to go, whoa, and be aware of myself. Take a breath and go, let that go.
How did you change that state? You just basically went, well, hang on, and took a breath, or did you have to tell yourself a different story in your head?
All of the above. And a practice in 2014, so 8 years ago, I started a dedicated practice of mindfulness meditation. It's been such a help, Claire. I can't begin to explain how helpful it's been. And it's a
Yeah.
mind training, like you're training yourself to come to a place of observation of anything that you can notice. So that means you can observe the emotion rather than being identified with it. You can observe the thoughts that are running in a loop in your head. You can observe them rather than being identified with them. And so as you practice being able to step outside the experience and just notice it, you become less consumed by it. So you develop the ability to let go of a state, take a breath and go, wow,
It's like dropping the ego. And I mean, I like one of the best books that I read was Ego is the Enemy, which from a work and a personal perspective and all of that thing. And it's very much, it was very insightful for me. And it is like removing that emotion, removing it all about being you and your ego and about who you are, because it's about taking a step back and actually witnessing, well, why am I feeling like this? And also going and understanding the other person and why are they reacting as such, and what are they reacting to, and what is their underlying requirement, and trying to not contribute to it, and trying to not react
seeking
to
to
it.
understand. Seeking to understand. And you're right, our ego is our sense of identity. And when we identify with any state that we're in, then we're way more stuck in that state. Our ego is also very defensive. So when our ego feels like it's challenged, then it gets very, very defensive. So the ability to step outside of that identification, take a breath and not be so consumed, then enables us to have a little bit more conscious awareness and curiosity about the other person. Where might they be coming from right now? Why are they so upset? Can I seek to understand? Which doesn't always mean I'm going to end up agreeing with you, but if I'm seeking to understand, it just softens the discourse a bit,
Yeah. And look, I think it's about focusing on you as the individual, like in domestic violence situations, in situations where you're dealing with addicts and things like that. The only person that you can really control and deal with is yourself, especially regarding addiction, domestic violence, whether it be verbal or physical or whatever. It's about taking care and looking after yourself, but also stepping back from that. And it is very hard in those situations to step back and not take it personally.
Yeah, if they knew how to be a better version of themselves, they would. They don't know how to do it. I mean, anyone in any given situation doesn't know how to be any better, in inverted commas, or, than they are. And, look, I'm thinking back to this, single parenting and the navigation of co-parenting. Earlier on, I said that, one of the toughest things was that we disagree on certain parenting dogma or ideas, but with the bigger stuff, we have really both tried to find a way to come to some middle ground. Like for example, one of our boys has very strong ADHD, and we were both on the same page, resisting medication for as long as possible, trying to scaffold and give him tools to be able to get through school and stop getting into trouble, et cetera, et cetera. But then his mum wanted him to go onto medication before I did, but it was a conversation. We didn't just kind of overrule each other. And then finally we came to the time where we went, all right, let's give this a crack. And we both went to see the pediatrician in Melbourne together. We both let him know that this is what we're doing together. So the bigger stuff, the bigger decisions on things, we've come together on.
How do you deal with that, though, if you don't necessarily agree with the other person's point of view, though? How do you get to a point where you're working together?
Yeah, sometimes there are things that we don't agree on and we don't come together on. It's tricky.
But with the big stuff, is there a certain way that you both deal with it? Like, is it, because I know with me, when I'm triggered by my ex-partner or whatever, like I have to stop, take a deep breath, take a step back and go, is this in the interest of my son to do X? Yeah. Is this the best thing for him? And I know for me that I've had to do that so many times. Like, is it the best thing? is it affecting him mentally, emotionally, or
Yeah.
whatever? And if it is, well, then the best thing is, to stop, to put boundaries around whatever needs to be put
Yeah.
around to protect
Child
him.
comes first, right?
Yeah.
Child comes
Yeah.
first. For
And I
some
think,
parents, unfortunately, they're so consumed and so childish themselves and so selfish in the separation, they don't even think about what's best for the kid. They're just thinking about what's best for them. And that's horrible. But they, like we said a minute ago, they don't know how to be any different. It's just unfortunate for.
Oh, it's scary. It's a scary thing. Like when you're talking about addicts, and those sort of situations, there may be so much pain, trauma, or so much that they've buried that, and you're taking away their crutch. You're taking away what is safe and secure. It's like being safe and secure in a room as such, and you're gonna open the door and kick them out of that room. That's like they've never been there before. They've never had to deal with not having that room to sit and be safe and secure in. And that's why addicts tend to fail. Sorry, it's not failing, but it's like, tend to go through several cycles of rehabilitation because it's a scary place. They are going back to their safe place, their cave as such. Their cave may be full of lots of narcotics or alcohol or whatever.
And in situations,
or it could be shopping, or it could be whatever.
In situations like that, and it's got to be case by case. But I think you're right. The child's well-being has to come first. It has to be the most important thing. And if there's a situation in a separation where the child's well-being is at risk with one of the parents due to addiction or due to violence or due to whatever, then the steps should be made, and it's not always easy, but should be made for the child's well-being. I've just been super lucky that in our separation, the boys have always been safe with their mum and always been safe with their dad. So that's fine. And the week on, week off thing, I always remind myself to have a certain level of compassion and respect for the kids because they're the ones living out of a suitcase and changing house every week.
Well, I know. I have heard of some couples having their own houses outside of the family house and that the kids stay in the one house. And we
talked about that. Do you know why I couldn't do that? Because I didn't want to live in a house and still be told that I wasn't putting things in the right place or putting things in the right drawer or doing things the right way.
But you're right. But you are right. And for some people that works. But you are right. And also, like, it's not your own domain.
That's right. And that to me was no. I need my own space after 20 years.
No, shame. But also, like, then it works for some people, and that's fine. That's great. But for me personally, I would find it like, are there rules for that one house that you all sort of like cohabit in? So I'm wondering if it actually causes, or it would cause problems for me, I suppose, in the fact that you'd have a week where it's your house and then you move out, somebody else moves in, and then it's a week of their house.
It would still be maybe our house, as in the ex-partners. And for my current partner, I mean, we've never had to speak about this, but I can imagine she'd be like, I don't want you sharing a house with your ex-wife, even though when they're at different weeks, you're still sharing a house together and you're still having to live with some compromised understanding of how we run a house,
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think you put that very well. It's that compromised understanding. And I don't think, for me, I'm not sure I'd want to be.
That's why the relationship didn't work, because the compromise was not working. It's in my current relationship, it doesn't even feel like a compromise. It's just so easy. It's just so easy. It doesn't ever feel like I'm having to go without or having to change what I want to do too much, because we're just so conscious and nice to each other,
Yeah, well, but I also wonder if it's because you get a break from each other as well. And I wonder if this is what the new way of being married should be, because personally, I sit there and go, I quite like having my own house. And one of the reasons I've not gone out and dated is because I don't want to.
Let's change the rules.
Like, I don't want to.
Let's evolve.
Yeah. Yes.
People say, oh my God, you guys, you're so in love. You've been together for 6 years and you still have separate houses. And we're like, and what's wrong with that? We get along better than
That's probably
we
what
get
keeps
along
you
better than
sane.
most couples we know. You know, we get our week together.
Yeah.
And then we have a week
Yeah, which
apart
is
where
great.
I've got my room and she's got her room and I've got my kids and she's got her kids. And as a blended family, we do lots of stuff together. We're going to the movies again on Saturday and we went to Nitro Circus the other night with all the kids. And so we do all that stuff together. But having our own space is actually really important. You know, we talk about one day we dream about when the kids have all grown up and flown the coop, you know, having...
Oh, my God, what are you going to do then?
We're going to build a house together somewhere beautiful.
Oh, okay.
But we talk about having our own spaces. You know, I'll have my studio where I go and write music and record and do my thing and write my books. And Tars will have her studio where she, you know, does her Pilates and her, so we'll have our own spaces as well. And we know how important that is. And
I think that's really important, like really important.
Yeah, why not?
Because otherwise, you're in the relationship, but you're not losing yourself to the relationship. You're like enhancing that relationship. Yeah. Oh, well, look, we will definitely get you back to talk about, you know, blended families and the challenges of that, because that is a whole different podcast.
It is.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So look, what did you find was the best resource? I don't know whether that's a book, whether that's something you've done or anything, but what was the best thing that you did to help your co-parenting situation, to help the boys with how they've grown up? I mean, they're adults now. Well, one of them will be soon.
One of the best kind of focuses, I don't know if this is a resource, but I've got a resource for people if they want it. But the one of the most important things I think to focus on is communication. And that doesn't mean it's easy, but it should be a focus. It should be something that as an individual I'm going to focus on. And I can't control if other people value communication or not, i.e. my ex, you know, which she does, thankfully. But if she didn't value communication, I wouldn't have been able to control that. Or my boys, all I can control or at least influence is me and how much I value communication and how much effort I put into continually improving my ability to communicate. Right. It's just been so important.
So did you do that? Did you do that through books? Did you do that with going
books,
to see someone?
Workshops,
did you,
understanding human behavior. So understanding the difference between masculine and feminine energy and how they communicate. Understanding the 4 behavioral styles, you know, the DISC model and how they communicate differently. Understanding the love languages. Read the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. You know, it's just so understanding all of the human code then improves our ability to be able to communicate effectively depending on who we're talking with, you know. Lots of meditation so that I can be more calm in communication rather than getting caught up or het up in the emotion of the situation, you know. So just remaining calm and present for other people, which came through meditation. But it all ended up clear in me writing this book, The Art of Conscious Communication. This first book is for thoughtful men, but the women that are reading it are writing to me and saying, oh, thank you so much for this book. I loved it. And now I'm giving it to my husband or my ex to read. But it's all about conscious communication. And for me, look, I have made a point of communicating with my boys all the way through it. And they feel like they can tell me everything. And I know they have some things that necessarily they keep from me because that's their sense of autonomy and independence. But whenever they're worried about anything, they come straight to me and tell me about it, regardless of what it is. Even if they're doing naughty stuff, they'll still come and talk with me about it, you know. And I think it's really important to have that communication channel open.
Yeah, no, look, and I'm hoping that I have that effect on my son, who knows what it'll be like when he's 18. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where we want to get to with our kids is, like, my view is, I know he'll do naughty stuff. I did naughty stuff, but in quote marks. It's all part of growing up, but it's actually being able to do naughty stuff and do it within the limitations that aren't going to kill you, or, you know, to be educated to understand, well, what is the
to feel safe to talk to their parent about it and go, hey, mum, I got offered this the other day. This is when he's much older than 6, obviously. I got offered this the other day. What do you think? Do you know what I mean? Like having the conversation with you, you know? And I think that's important. The other thing too, Claire, I think is really important is that, you know, you can have integrity to your values You can be authentic and stick to your values, even if your ex doesn't. So I was coaching a client, and she was saying, and communication's big for her. She really values communication. And in the co-parenting relationship, she was getting so frustrated with her ex because he was a shit communicator and he didn't value it. So every time at handover, she'd say, hey, here's the list of things you need to know this week. Logistical, right? So she's got this on this day and he's got a doctor's appointment on this day and you need to follow up. Oh, and emotionally, she's been going through a tough time with this and blah. So she's communicating everything to him. He would metaphorically just kind of screw up the paper and chuck it away and not even listen to her.
But it's all. I look at that and I also go, that's a
control, right? And then when they were doing the handover back in the other direction, he just wouldn't communicate with her what was going on, and she'd find out through the kids what's going on, right? So she was getting annoyed and upset that the communication was only one way. So she got to the point where she just went, oh, do you know what? I feel like just going, fuck it, I'm not even going to try and communicate about the kids anymore. And I said, how would that make you feel? You know, and she said, well, I feel shit because we should be communicating, you know. And I said, how about if you just kept it and said, he should do whatever he does, but I should always be communicative because I believe in that, right? Rather than lowering your standards of your values and how you want to live just to come and play down on the level of the ex, why don't you just keep communicating and let go of the expectation that he should do the same, right? And I
completely agree with you. Because at the end of the day, quintessentially, you can't control the ex. You can't control that other person, right? So if they make, but what you can control is how you react and what you're doing, right? So if you believe your value is that communication is really valuable to me and I need to, you know, I'm going to, because like you said, you're lowering yourself to that other person's standards. And actually, like, there are times where I do sit there and I think, what would my son be saying to me in 10 years' time when he's 16 if he went, oh, well, Mum, you just gave up, right? And I'm going, no. Like, it's not about, like, it's, I've never been one for giving up anyway, but it's you know, it's all about him. Do you know what I mean? It's what's good for him. Well, it's good that I communicate all of these things to the ex-person, even if they're not going to communicate back to me. Still continue to do that because it's good for my children.
It's good for my children to see that I strive to be the best version of myself.
Yes.
It's good for them to see that I do actually strive to live to my values and have integrity. And I'm a human and I trip over and I mess up. But generally speaking, I'm, you know, if these are the things I value, that I'm living by example. That's good for our kids to see that, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just going, oh,
exactly.
You know.
I mean, but very insightful from you is the fact of what people don't actually realize is in holding on to, well, they should be doing this and they should be doing that. It's causing you stress and stress within your body, and therefore it's not constructive for you because you're projecting what they should and shouldn't be doing. Well, they're their own human being, right? So they should be doing whatever they believe they should be doing, and it's not about what you believe they should be.
Yeah, completely.
There's a lot too
100%.
Many shoulds in there.
And that's that's the bottom line, okay? Too many shoulds.
You've got to let go.
That's the bottom line. Whenever you hear yourself saying they should be this or they should be that or that should have this and that should, drop it. All it's doing is causing you grief, you know? And
and they're not stressed.
They're just doing their thing.
They're sitting there probably going, happy days, this is good, this is getting you stressed. I'm not stressed. And the more it winds you up, the more they may be feeling happy because it's
who
that
knows,
element of control.
Whether they're feeling happy or not. But certainly the kids are kids are picking
and who
up
cares?
On it. The more stressed you are, the more unhappy you are, the more let down you feel, the more exacerbated you feel with other people and life in general. You're teaching your kids how to be. And I think this is really important leverage to create change. Because we all care about our kids, right? Well, most of us care about our kids. Yeah. So if you think, wow, the way I'm being right now, i.e. pissed off and exacerbated and disappointed and upset and let down all the time, I'm showing my child how to be. Do I want them to live a life like this? God, no. I want them to be chilled and ease and flow and happy and loving life, Yeah. So you got to figure out a way to be like that. And what you said, Claire, is just one of the keys to that is to let go of expecting that other people should behave the way you think they should behave.
Yeah.
Ain't going to happen.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And then when you do actually let go of all of that, you find that you're actually in a happier
Mm,
place
mm,
and a happier person and
yeah.
more chilled and more considerate and more empathetic
Yeah.
of other people, even when they
Yeah.
are being, dare I say it, a Karen, or I don't know what the male
I don't know.
version would be. What is the
I
male
don't know.
version of a Karen? Again? I don't
Daz.
know. But yeah,
I've got a friend,
yeah,
Daz. I don't know why I said
I don't
Daz.
know.
But, but I
Poor
know, right? Oh,
Daz.
poor
God,
Karen. I've
come
got friends,
on.
Karen, as well. But,
Yeah. I know. Oh,
it's
yeah, no,
interesting that
me
you say
too.
this because this was part of my healing was also letting go of expecting that the boy's mum should be in certain ways and going, no, 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 she should
Yeah.
just be who she is and do things the way she does them, and
Yeah.
that was really, really hard because just quietly, just between you and me and everyone else who's listening, there were
Oh,
times when she would do things that I thought wasn't fair on the kids. She would have conversations with them. She used to try and poison them against me and poison them against my partner. And I
oh,
thought,
wow.
that's not fair on the kids. And that used to
Yeah.
really upset me
No.
because of my boys. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. We'd broken up and it's like, you're entitled to hate me if you want, but don't try and get our kids to think badly against me as well. And I would see the effect that would have on the boys because they'd come home to me and go, Dad, it was really awkward, really upset because Mum was saying this about you and that about you.
Yeah.
And I made a point of never putting her down
No,
to them,
me
never
too.
talking about
Yeah.
her faults to them because that wasn't fair on them. So it wasn't easy because I then had to go, actually, Jem, you've got to let this go. If she is having these conversations with the boys, she should. Is it not because it's good for them, but because she's doing it. So you've got
Right.
to accept it. So I just had to accept that that's what was going on and let it go. I mean, I
Yeah,
tried.
no,
I
it's
tried to
so
have some
good.
conversations with her back in the days when it was really sticky and hard, and saying, "Hey, I don't care what you think about me.
Stop.
That's fine. But the boys are coming to me in tears because of the stuff you're saying to them. Like, what are you doing?"
Mm, mm, yeah. And also, like, I have to agree with you regarding that because no matter all the things that I've been through with my ex-partner, at the end of the day, quintessentially, he's my
Yeah,
kid's
yeah,
dad, right? And when I look, and I don't, and being the age I am, right, there are some things that my parents have done. When I was his age, my parents were God, right? They
right,
could do no wrong, right? I'm now at the age I am going,
yeah,
wow, okay, maybe you need to reconsider what you're saying. Maybe you need to reconsider your attitude there. Maybe, and like it's the
yeah,
age I am, right? God love my mum because she's listening to this. But at the end of the day, they're human. That's why
yeah,
this podcast is called Strong, Single, and
yeah,
Human. We're all
yeah,
human. There is stuff I do
yeah,
that I know is not
yep,
constructive to me, my child, anything, right? But it's about recognizing taking a step back. And sometimes it's recognizing and taking a step back, not before I've actually done it,
yeah,
but I go and do it. And then I go, oh, shit, that was not the most effective way to tell my son to go to bed
yeah, yep,
or to get something done or, to do whatever, right? So to get what I want, what I need, that was not the effective way to do it. It was my frustrations coming out,
yeah,
which is not,
yeah,
which is not constructive. But
absolutely.
yeah,
And
so
when we stuff up, which is what we do, right? So when
yeah,
we stuff up in a moment, and then we come out of that moment, we go, "Oh, bugger, that was a really
yes,
terrible way to do that."
yeah,
There's for me, I think an important part of this self acceptance, self love
mm,
relationship to develop is, hey, Jem, in that moment right then, you lost it. It's okay. You're
yeah,
human. You didn't wake up this morning thinking, how can I hurt my kids? Right? You're trying your best. You're human. You lost it. Full forgiveness, full acceptance doesn't mean that I'm going, oh, well, I can just be a dick now whenever I want. It's not about that. It's about that wasn't cool. And I hope next time I do it better. And I'm going to think about how I can try and do it better next time.
how do I
But
do it
in
different?
terms of self retribution, no. 100% self acceptance, self forgiveness, self love, I think so important because if you continue this relationship of I'm a dickhead, I shouldn't yell at my kids or I shouldn't have done this and holding on to this negative self talk, you're just setting yourself up to be worse in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if there have been and there are times where I will and it's not constructive, it never has been constructive to yell at your child, but there are times where buttons get pushed, you're tired, you're trying to do half a dozen things, being a single parent, and your child is going, mom, 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 mom. And you just go, please just be quiet for a second or whatever, maybe shut up, I don't know. It's then going back to that child and going, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, I didn't deal with that situation very good.
Yeah.
Or we didn't deal with that situation very good, because there are times, me and my son are very similar, where we stand shouting at each other or whatever, or, we're conflicting because we're the same.
Yeah.
And it's about sitting down and going, how can we do that better? This isn't working.
Yeah.
How do we, and he's 6, but he's very good at telling me how it is. So, it's all good.
Beautiful.
Okay. So, this book sounds I don't have a partner to actually give this book to, but this book sounds interesting, mate. I'll get it and read it myself.
Yeah.
So, how do people, are you on Amazon? Do they go to a website?
They can go to Amazon. If you're in Australia, it's probably easier to just grab it off my website. My website is jemfuller.com. So JEM fuller.com. Just grab the book from there if you want, or Booktopia or Amazon, or in your local bookshop. They can order it in the distributor or bring it to the bookshop. However, it's easiest for you to get it.
Wow. Okay.
It's going to be on Audible soon. I've recorded the
awesome.
Audible, and the production team are doing all the mixing and making stuff that I don't know how to do. So it'll be on Audible in the next month or two, I think.
Wow, an Audible book. That to me is the next level.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. Because it's okay to write books, but when you're on Audible, no, that's awesome. And that's really good because people can be doing dinner and listening to your book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, which is why I'm doing the podcast, because I'm hoping that's what people do with my podcast.
Right.
So, okay, brilliant. And are there other resources on your website as well that you've got?
Yep. I've got online courses on resilience. I've got an introduction to meditation course. In fact, I can make it free for your listeners, the meditation course, if they want. So when they go onto my online courses, there's an introduction to mindfulness meditation course. It's just 10 meditations and you can download it. When you get to the checkout page, just type the words spring gift as one word. So spring and gift in the coupon bit, and then the course will be free and you can download it and have it.
That's awesome. Great. Okay. Well, look,
you're welcome.
One final question. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
If I could have a superpower, what would it be? I guess the ultimate level of calm and compassion, so that to be ultimately calm in situations where my ego gets in the way, and ultimately compassionate to truly understand what someone's going through or where they're coming from.
So more like a Zen power, like a Buddhist sort of Buddhist monk.
I'd love to be able to fly.
Yeah. There is that. I know. Well, see, I've had several. I've had fly, time travel. Yeah. Just hopping from one country. So a little. Well, it's not time travel, but it would be like a little portal. Like a little portal that you would just go, I want to go to London, and you just go, ship, and you'd be there within 2 minutes.
I know, but if you could do that, you miss out on all of those hours of having food and drinks brought to you, and having your phone not working, and having some time to just switch off and read a book or watch a movie.
Don't even go there. You haven't been on and you're in Victoria the same as me, so you haven't been on a plane for a long time. No. There is none of this now. Not having your phone work, internet, everything.
I just pretend it doesn't work. I just pretend I don't know about that.
Well, no, that's fair enough. I have to say, it was the one thing, because I used to fly a lot from London to Australia, because I had a long distance relationship for about 18 months, and that's why I'm here. Yeah, I have to agree with you. Sitting on that plane, and I would sit there and go,
Switching
okay,
off.
this is 24 hours of watching movies or watching one. And I was it was just heaven for me, because I was so busy at work, and I didn't have a kid then as well, so that was great. So I had a busy social life. I was busy at work, so I didn't get to do the Netflix thing. I mean, I do that quite a bit more now because I have a child. So he's in bed early, and I go do the Netflix thing. But okay, well, great.
So superpower, maybe it sounds a bit boring, but the ability to be calm and centered in the midst of a storm is a superpower.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then the other one that's sort of like superhero-ish is the flying.
Oh, yeah, flying.
Isn't it?
Yeah, flying would be cool.
Oh, I said the other one is like the superhero bit is the flying, though.
Oh, wow.
So I have to
that
ask,
would depend
though,
on the mood
right?
I was
I ask
in.
this with everyone who says their superpower would be flying.
You know, if I felt
cape
like
or no
if I felt
cape?
like having a cape flapping in the wind, then it'd be on. And
Oh, really? Okay. See, I sit there and like my view on this is if you're a superhero and you're flying, right? You don't have any cape, right? Because it could get caught on things.
I know.
See, so I'm going,
Maybe if
you know,
it had a
and
quick
evil
release,
people
like
could
if
grab
it
your
had a
cape
quick
and
release
strangle
Velcro
you, and
bit,
that's
and the
superhero over.
baddies grab it
So
and you
I
just
don't know,
shed it
maybe
like a
that's just where
lizard,
my
like a lizard
weird
dropping
and
its tail,
wonderful.
you know?
Velcro. Oh, well, that's true. Oh, yeah.
We could.
Then you could be flying lizard man. That would be. Oh, we could go down a whole avenue here as well. Look, thank you so much for joining me, Jem. It's been great talking to you and finding out about, you know, your journey you've had with co-parenting, basically, because it's not easy. It sounds like you guys have, you know, it's been a lot easier than some people have it.
Yeah.
And the challenges that some people have had, but like it's still hard, right? You're still dealing with two people with emotions and
it can be a roller coaster.
Kids, basically, that you're
you know,
trying to
my
like
partner and I
keep
call it the RFC,
you know,
which is the roller coaster.
Yeah, look,
because sometimes they're here, sometimes your ex is here and it's all fine, and then the next week they're like, it's like, oh god damn, trying to keep up with it, you know. So it's a bit of, it can be a roller coaster, but look, you know, humans are complex creatures, and we're certainly a blend of functional sometimes and very dysfunctional in other times, and you know, it's tricky, but what we just keep waking up and doing what we can do, right? Us. Yep.
Well, it's just about keep waking up and being the better version of yourself, and keep trying to just be and that having better conversations version like this, every Claire, single day. Really important.
So I just want to say thank you to you for putting this podcast on and all the energy and the effort you put into it, because without having conversations about this stuff, nothing would be likely to change. So.
Yeah, and look, that's why I started this, so that I can get people like yourself who have been through these sort of things to come on board and say, hey guys, like, you're not the only people out there. Because I know sometimes when you sit in a situation, you're like, oh, this is, you know, I'm the only person going through this, and you're not. Yeah, it's just about standing up and going, right, how do I get out of this situation, and trying to give people hope. And trying to say other people have been through this, so you can learn from what they've been through.
Beautiful.
And move forward, you know, small steps at a time, baby steps. Let's not go leaping and bounding. Sometimes that's leaping and bounding off a cliff that we maybe don't want to leap and bound off. But yes, no, look, thank you. I will let you get on with your day. And we'll definitely get you back on. I've already had conversations with you about various different things that we need to get you back on and talk about, because you've been through a hell of a journey, and it's great.
Awesome.
Let's get you back on, talk about blended families.
Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah,
let's do that.
I'd love to.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. No. Okay. Well, all right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you'd like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family on all the usual social media platforms that you're normally on. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content that I know you're going to want to hear, like this. If you want to check out past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one's perfect, and we're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.